This is the Tom Bigby Tales, and I'm your host, Shannon Evans. I write about a small town in northeast Mississippi along the Tom Bigby River called Columbus, and sometimes I write about the rest of the state. Today is another episode in the series about Nancy Luke Carpenter and our Tennessee Williams building, which is owned by the Columbus Cultural Heritage Foundation, a 501c3. This episode is titled Robbing Peter to Pay Paul at the Columbus Cultural Heritage Foundation. Last week, I reported on Nancy Luke Carpenter's appeal last Thursday night to the Columbus City Council for a matching grant that the mayor inexplicably promised without council knowledge or approval on September 29th, 2023, in a letter that Carpenter included in her grant application. That would have been a year ago. In October of 2023, I reported that the mayor had signed a promissory note to the Mississippi Department of Archives and History, the grant owners, for $54,069.69, matching grant share. And he included the form, as well as a letter of support that said he would work with Carpenter to identify sources of funding in the council. So he kind of backpedaled on the promissory note he signed in the same application packet. Carpenter still needed a way to prove that she had this matching fund in hand because he wasn't giving her a check and he wasn't authorized to do so. So when she submitted that grant last September, she had to show a bank statement with matching grants before the work could start, which was supposed to start 1 April, but didn't start until later. So old Nancy, instead of going to the city council or even the councilman for the Tennessee Williams district that it is in, which is Stephen Jones, instead, in late March of 2024, she went to the CVB board treasurer, Matt Bogue. This is the employer she's leaving for full-time work at the foundation, and asked for the remainder of their budget funding for the foundation for the year, which was approximately $51,000. She told Bogue that since the podcast of Tom Bigby Tales, she was not getting any money from the city and she would use the operational budget to fund the grant match. Now, I'll remind you, I wrote a significant piece in October of 2023 after that grant was submitted, and I was informed of the content of that grant, and especially that letter from the mayor. Bogue presented this proposal from Carpenter for the foundation to give her the lump sum, and then that would, quote, get Carpenter out of their hair for the remainder of the fiscal year. Nancy ran with that check, deposited it, and turned around and sent the bank statement to MDAH to prove her match share, ignoring the fact that it was really still needed for operational funds for the building that she then immediately shut to the public with zero public notice. While work slowly started inside after April 18th, plaster work and fresh interior paint was started. Tom Bigby Tales asked where the operational funds that paid her elderly docents went. Public pressure forced Carpenter to continue paying these docents during the shutdown. The light and water still was on for the workers to use, and so on the exterior and the interior of the home. And so her match grant was clearly not going to pay the actual contracts as part of that match. Fast forward to this August of 2024, this podcast revealed that after the plaster work after interior and exterior work was done, and after a porch frame and some decking was installed, the rotten sill beams were just getting covered with 2x6s. Then on August 15th, 2023, almost an entire year after the grant application was submitted, and almost a year since we at Tom Bigby Tales exposed the unsupported grant match promise and the need to appeal to the city council for said match, and almost 6 months after sending a bank statement to MDAH, quote, showing she had the match, Carpenter finally reached out to Councilman Jones, asking him to support her request for funds for the foundation, a 501c3, asking for public funds from the city for the building's renovations on the day of the public hearing for next year's fiscal year's funds. Yes, as usual, old Nancy waited until the very last minute to appeal to her councilman and the council at large for the $50K plus she desperately will need to pay for the work at the Tennessee Williams building. More on that bill in a minute. I must admit Jones was spot on when in the meeting he asked her before the crowd and the council, why was she only now coming before the council? Why did she wait? And isn't it customary to get the match secured before submitting a grant? She had no answer. She changed the subject. She even lied to the council that she was always transparent with grant money. Need I even mention the self-licking ice cream cone episode on the Mississippi Hills grant that she got last year, and the board she paid $10K to be on, and the board that at the Mississippi Hills that awards each other grants. Something she brought up in the middle of this particular request for funds from the city, saying she'd already gotten some money from Mississippi Hills. Whoa. This is something akin to what happened on this MDAH grant. Did she get special privileges? And did she get special dispensation for missing elements because she sits on the grant committee, which is the board of trustees at the MDAH? Only time will tell. At the time of the city council meeting where she went to ask for money, the rotting sills were not being replaced on this building, which are giant beams that I discussed in the previous episode. These giant rotting sills were in the engineering report that stated those needed to be replaced or the walls were in danger of collapsing on the exterior of the building. While at this time of that meeting on last Thursday, the rotting sills were not being replaced. However, the porch was on clearly a fast track and almost completed, and everyone was ignorant in the council and the public of that engineer's report until the next day when I got the public records that arrived from MDAH that I had requested and read on the last episode of Tombigbee Tales. Not 24 hours after that podcast episode was released in the wild, and all exhibits from that episode were emailed or delivered to the Foundation Board, the Columbus Visitors Bureau Board, the City Council, Mayor Gaskin, the City Engineer, the City Building Inspector, and the Board of Supervisors. That, dear friends and Miss Carpenter, is how transparency works. I shared the documents that I had. I also shared them with the Columbus newspaper, the Dispatch. The following Monday, this Monday, the east side of the building was suddenly being prepped to be jacked up, and that rotten sill was replaced. Imagine that. After Tombigbee Tales episode, suddenly they decided to ignore the fact that they had a big porch that had already been added on and almost complete, and they thought they'd jack up the building and replace the rotten sill. Today, the men who had been putting the new decking on that porch that was attached to a frame, hung on 2x4s that were nailed to the rotten front sill, well, that decking was being deconstructed today. Wow. Now it seems to me that the sills should have been replaced before any interior plastering and painting was done, due to the house being jacked up 3 different times to complete these replacements. That seems more reasonable. However, it would also seem that due to all the shiplapping siding being removed or bolted over, shouldn't that have been replaced and repainted after the sills were replaced, not before? And it certainly stands to reason the new porch footings, the frame, and decking of said porch should not be been installed before the front sill required their removal for replacement. While we know the sill replacement will drive up the cost of the $200,000 existing project, by the way, the cost was $195,679 according to the bid. This sill replacement will drive the project cost up by a minimum of $147,000. How much more is this going to cost to redo the work that they have already done? Because Carpenter was caught putting lipstick on the foundation's pig instead of doing the job correctly in the first place and replacing those sills. She is now creating a much larger problem in overages that the piddly $25K pad in her previous budget will never cover. Where is her board? Where is the project coordinator, who is also the board president, Brenda Willis, who's supposedly signing off on all this? And why is she AWOL? Why is Nancy making all these decisions? Well, let's go back to my question about paying the bills coming due sometime after the 30th of August of 2024. We know from the public records requests that we did at Tom Bigby Tales, no extensions have been requested thus far from MDAH, despite Pryor and Morrow telling Carpenter and that the project is 8 weeks behind due to weather and other issues. And that was before replacing the rotted sill beams. How far are they going to be behind now? As soon as the project is done, and all the band-aids are going to have to be put back on that'll be messed up from jacking up the house, the bills for all this work will have to be paid. Pryor and Morrow, Joe Morgan Construction, all the subs, the folks with the building jacks, and all the materials will come due. And MDAH only agreed to pay a certain amount. And a 20% matching grant was supposed to be provided by Carpenter, which she still has not secured, yet has already, quote, had the money in the bank, according to MDAH, and we know is already spent on salaries at the foundation and the continued operation of the power in that building and paying any other bills, including her own salary. Where is the next Peter she plans to rob to pay Paul? Who will not get paid and who will sue, and what will that cost? Someone will be short 54K. There's no avoiding that. So here's Nancy hoping the city will give her money to cover what she spent already and should have asked for over a year ago. She's also groveling to the CVB to fund the foundation for well over $100K for the next fiscal year, despite squandering hundreds of thousands of dollars of the CVB's money before they finally forced her out the door. It does not look like they will fully fund the foundation for this coming year. We can hope that they stick to that. So where is Nancy going to find $54K to pay contractors and over $110,000 to keep the foundation doors open? Nancy's circling the drain and panicking as there are no lifelines evident with open pockets for her to pick at this time. Is it finally the end of the road for Nancy Luke Carpenter and her days of robbing the public tax-funded coffers of Columbus? Surely she won't pull another Lazarus at this late stage. Thank you for coming on the Tom Bigby Tales. I hope you'll call your city council member and you'll call the CVB board members and the CVB's current director, Francis Glenn and Sharon Johnson, and tell them, do not fund this particular boondoggle, this matching grant, or the foundation's future operation budget. Thank you for joining me on the Tom Bigby Tales. Until next time.